right,
awake.
yeah. All right, thanks. Good afternoon, everybody. My name is Mariah Payachuli. I'm a master's student here at UNM studying chemical engineering. It's my pleasure to be the host today for the Engineering in Action Speaker Series with Dr. Melanie Moses and Dr. Matthew Frick. Dr. Moses is a professor in the Department of Computer Science. She teaches the study of complex biological systems, including the adaptive immune system and ant colonies. Her research designs efficient, robust, adaptive, and scalable engineered systems, including robots that mimic ant behaviors to collect resources cooperatively. Dr. Frick is a research assistant professor in the Department of Computer Science. He is also interested in biological computation, robotics, and immune system activation. Frick is an affiliated faculty at the UNM Center for Advanced Research Computing, a member of the Moses Biological Computation Lab and the Lab for Agnostic Biosignatures. Today, they will tell us how their Project Volcano effort grew out of the successful NASA Swarmathon project and what it means for future possibilities of unpiloted aerial vehicles. Before we get started, I would like to mention that we do have a time at the end reserved for questions and answers. So I encourage you to use the chat function, which is at the bottom of your Zoom screen, for any of your questions. So it's now my pleasure to introduce Drs. Moses and Dr. Frick.
Wonderful, thank you. I'm just going to share my screen and hope that you're getting a full screen view of our first slide. So thank you for the introduction. I'm excited to talk about our work. And I'll just mention, we just came from another UNM alum group and heard President Stokes speaking about her one university vision, which really means that we're really looking for ways to unify the different academic disciplines in the university. So what I'll talk to you about today is work that's really collaborative across main campus and the School of Medicine, the College of Engineering, Arts and Sciences, Architecture and Planning. And to me, that's really part of what makes doing this kind of research fun, is that we get to work with so many different students and faculty across the university. So this, where humans fear to tread, we'll talk about how we got to design ground-based robots for our Swarmathon, and then what we and mostly the students did to take them to the skies to study volcanoes. And so I'll start by giving a little bit of an introduction to the kind of research that we do in my lab. Our goal in this lab has always been to be a place that's at the nexus of computer science and biology. And so we try to set up a research environment where we can take insights from computation and tools, computational tools, to model complex biological systems that are not maybe so easy to fully understand with, experimental methods that biologists typically use. And then on the other side of the coin, we study nature. We try to understand, as was said in the introduction, how robust and scalable and adaptable systems exist in the real world in nature, so that we can take those principles and implement them in computational systems. And in this case, we'll talk about robotic computational systems. So I'm going to tell you about two projects, one on each side of that coin. The first one, just a brief introduction to our Simcoe modeling project. And so this is a project to, let's see if I can make this advance, to understand the spread of the SARS-CoV-2, the virus that causes COVID-19. And we want to understand it. Let me see if I can get this to play again. We want to understand the spread, not the way that we all think about it, which is how do we prevent spread of the virus between ourselves? Uh-oh. Okay. And instead, we want to understand how the virus spreads through the lung. So this is just a quick simulation, kind of giving an idea of how we could sort of study this at the cellular scale, how the virus might spread, for example, in a petri dish, and how it infects different kinds of cells, and how, in turn, the T cells. Seems like Matthew, maybe you might need to be muted. We're in neighboring offices. And so we study sort of what's an arms race between the virus and the T cells, one arm of your immune system that's designed to stop this virus from spreading between your cells. And we can use the simulation to understand the dynamics over time. How does the count of the virus, the count of the immune response, the death of your own cells, how do those dynamics play out? But what we're really interested in is not how cells would get infected in a petri dish, but rather how cells get infected in a human lung. And so this project has used computational modeling to account for systems that are really hard to observe in the lab or in real life. So unfortunately, I think we are all very, very familiar with a nasal swab. That's now how we all get tested to find out if we have this virus replicating. There are many unfortunate things about this process. One of them is that the nasal swab goes in your nose, and your nasal cavity is actually pretty small. And the area of your body that gets severe infection that could lead to pneumonia, severe illness, hospitalization, or death is first your lung. And your lung is really big. And so this is a cast actually of a lung. It shows a fractal branching surface of the blood vessel, the airway vessels. And if you were to take those vessels outside of the lung and spread them out flat, which of course you should never do, but if you were to do that, it would take up the surface area of about half a tennis court. So this is a really vast area. And what we're trying to model computationally is how does virus spread over this area? How do immune cells search for virus in this area? And how does that race play out, given that it's so hard to observe? So in the, I'm going to try to move the screen a little bit. In the lower corner here, this is a scan of a patient that's actually fairly healthy, but has about 10% of their lung is infected. Often patients with COVID-19, one of the mysteries is they might have quite a bit of infection, but not even quite notice it. People who are severely ill often have really large portions of their lung that are infected. And so we want to understand the dynamics of the growth of the virus using these computational techniques. So the first thing that we did, I think Akil is here on this call. Akil grew what I really love here is a branching model of the lung. So biologically, as an organism develops, its lung actually grows in this manner of branching, in the case of a human, about 26 times, until it gets to this final stage where these, what's colored here in red, are the alveolar sacs, or the places where air exchange happens. Also, unfortunately, the place where lots of viral infection can occur. So we took this model that Akil built, and we used it as a template to simulate how T cells track the virus across this really complex surface. So what you're looking at here are in green T cells of mice crawling over the surface area of a lung that's been explanted from a mouse. The airways are kind of shown here in blue, these little sort of blobby areas, and the T cells are searching for virus over that space. And then we run these same kinds of simulations that I showed you before, and the result are things like these red spots are showing the concentration of the simulated virus, an area of inflammation surrounding that actually causes a lot of the lung damage, and T cells moving in that space. So our most recent result, this is not yet published. We just pulled this together for a recent proposal that we'll hope will get NIH to fund some future work in this space. But we're able to roughly match the dynamics of the growth of a single patient. This is one patient shown over time, how the virus spreads in their lung. We're able to do a decent job matching that rate of growth using this model, assuming that we have this kind of complex topology that the virus and the T cells are spreading over. So that gives a sense of sort of the first half of the kind of work that we do in the lab, where we use computational tools in biology. And on the other side of the coin, I will switch over and talk about how we use biology to build computational systems that can work in the real world. So I think, I'm not sure if we have spoken to this particular audience before. I'll just give a quick overview of our Swarmathon project. This was a project that we ran actually until, well, actually right up until the pandemic. So maybe that was good timing on our part, where we engaged students from UNM, but more broadly, about 1,500 students from around the country participated in building robots, writing algorithms for them, and then testing them at Kennedy Space Center. So this is our group in the parking lot in Kennedy Space Center, having just watched a rocket launch, which was an incredibly cool thing to be able to watch. And so we developed this competition that I'll show you about now and sort of explain how that was sort of the launch pad for the aerial robots that Matthew will talk about. So the basic task that NASA funded us to develop a competition to solve was, how can astronauts live on Mars or the moon, places where they will need food, they will need water, they'll need fuel, and they'll need oxygen. And the vision that NASA has to get these massive amounts of materials that people will need if we're going to explore in outer space, is that robots will need to autonomously collect frozen water, ice, from patches that exist on these planetary surfaces or on the surface of the moon. And sometimes these sources are in big craters like you see here, but more often they're in little tiny patches. And so how could you have a robot explore the surface and collect these resources and bring them back to a place where astronauts can use them? And so we developed the Swarmathon to test that. And we developed it starting, of all places, at the Sevieta Wildlife Refuge and field site, which is just north of Socorro. So that's me and Matthew out in the desert watching ants as a model for how we might build robots that can forage for resources. So we spend lots of time in the hot sun, tried to understand the behaviors that these ants use in order to cooperatively identify resources that are in unknown locations scattered out in the world, and bring them back. And so this top panel here is showing a little simulation. We built computer models that we tested to see, are these the right behaviors that ants are using to successfully collect seeds? And then we turned those behaviors into algorithms that we could test in simulation for robots. And then we took those algorithms and we put them in robots. And so this movie is showing, these are actually this is not our algorithm. This is an algorithm by SIPI, Native American Tribal College in Albuquerque. That was one of our star teams, in fact, in the Swarmathon. And what we were really trying to do here is, we had robots that could do this using ant-inspired algorithms. We had students develop other sorts of algorithms, and we wanted to see what are the best approaches to this problem of having autonomous robots that could identify resources, communicate with each other, to collect these resources as fast as possible. And in the end, there was a lot of blood, sweat, and tears of students that went into this. And our answer to the question are the bio-inspired approaches that we use, are these the best approaches? The answer was sometimes. We really could get more scalable and flexible approaches by mimicking the behaviors of ants. But to do really well in this competition, student teams would have to put in some real, sort of traditional engineering skills and traditional computer science skills. And so ever since the Swarmathon, we have been exploring ways to combine typical engineering and computer science to sort of augment what we can understand about how the natural world works. So one example, actually, I will first let the student Antonio Griego, who started with us, gosh, about 7 or 8 years ago, say a few words about his experience working for the Swarmathon.
Hello, my name is Antonio Griego, and I just wanted to share a few words about how the Swarmathon program affected me personally. As an undergraduate student, I got the opportunity to engage in real research, real software development on a large scale outside of the classroom, and on outreach and working with other students, building connections with faculty members and other students. And overall, I would not be where I was. I would not have had the other internship opportunities I've had, and I would not be a master's student right now in the program if it wasn't for this amazing opportunity. Thank you.
All right, so those are Antonio's words. It's great to see. He's just about to finish up his master's degree now, having finished his undergraduate degree a couple of years ago on an internship at Sandia Labs. And he was a great resource for the Swarmathon. So it's also wonderful to hear kind of his experience with this. And I have to figure out, how to advance. I really like hearing Antonio, but not multiple times in a row. So I will go ahead and advance this way. And so one other project that has grown out of the Swarmathon is what we are calling Swarmathon the Next Generation. So we've taken the robots that are still going all these years later, and we are now integrating machine learning techniques into the robot operating system. And these machine learning techniques are doing what seems to be a simple task. The robots that already know how to go out and pick up cubes in the environment and drop them off, we're now asking them to recognize which cubes are good and which cubes are bad. Sort of the idea that one cube, in this case, the one that we call the cube house, made in this particular shape is like food. We would like the robot to collect it. And the one that we call cube lock in this other shape is like poison, and we would like the robot to avoid it. And so what you're seeing here is the robot's view of the world. It's able to use, it's sort of looking at these different cubes. It's using machine learning, sort of cutting edge artificial intelligence at this point to identify which kind of thing is this. And if it's the right thing, it will pick it up there. In that case, it was the wrong thing, it turned away. It's the wrong thing again, and it turned away, and now it sees the right thing, and it goes and it picks it up, and it rather indelicately picks it up and slams it into the wall, but we call that success. So that's a project that's running now. We have some students in a course and a workshop really designed to engage students in this research process with cutting edge tools, but working with robots, which always makes it more fun. And so now we'll hear from Humaira, who is a graduate student who's been leading this project.
Hello, I am Humaira Tasnim. I am a PhD candidate in computer science at the University of New Mexico. I am part of Swarmathon, the Next Generation, which is the UNM Google Explore CSR activity. It has given me the opportunity to work on cool things like developing machine learning models for object recognition in swarm robots. I also get to encourage and mentor undergraduate students, especially from the underrepresented community, to pursue a research career. Through Swarmathon, the Next Generation, I have obtained the chance to network with Google developers, mentors, and researchers firsthand, which is extremely beneficial for my future endeavors. Thank you.
All right, and that was also Humaira being very modest. She's actually led this whole effort, done lots of work to begin to build a platform where we can integrate artificial intelligence techniques, all of this sponsored by Google, so we're using Google software, into our robotic platform. All right, and then from here, I think we're going to have the same problem. So let me escape and move on to the next part of the talk. And this part, I think, is Matthew. And Matthew, would you like me to continue sharing screen?
I think doing some technological backflips, I managed to get it working on my machine, so I'll be able to control the presentation. I'll share my screen.
So I will stop sharing and allow Dr. Frick to tell you about where we've been most recently.
Oh dear, it's asking me to give permission and it's going to restart Zoom.
So perhaps I should do it. Oh, there, good.
Okay, good. Didn't have to restart after all. All right, so can you hear me and can you see some funny looking robots?
Yes.
Great. So as Melanie said, we just addressed the UNM Alumni Directors Board, which was a great opportunity, but I'm really expecting some hard technical questions from our engineering school alum, and I'm prepared to answer those at the end. And I've got John Erickson here, who is the PhD student involved in a lot of this work to help me with that. All right, so as Melanie said, NASA's goal is to put people on the moon or Mars, to depending which political party is in power, it switches back between Moon and Mars for some reason. But it's clear you can't send people all the way to Mars or even the Moon and have them be there for the long term without having them use resources that are already on Mars. If you try to package up all the water, air, fuel, food you would need to spend a year on Mars, and you would have to spend at least a year because of the way the orbits work. You can't just go there for a day trip and come back. You need to spend an extended period there. If you tried to do that, I did some back of the envelope calculations, it would exceed the entire budget of NASA, right? Because it costs millions of dollars for every kilogram you put into orbit, and then sending it to Mars is even more expensive. So NASA is committed to finding ways to use water ice to get those components. So you can get obviously water from water ice, but you can also get hydrogen and oxygen, which is rocket fuel. And you can also get oxygen to breathe. So NASA set up this competition called the Space Robotics Challenge 2 that we entered last year. And this challenge is on a simulated moon surface with robots that we had to program. These robots had to move around the environment, and they had to find different kinds of ice. So water isn't the only kind of ice. There's also methane ice, for example, that's useful. And we qualified in the competition last year, and the students were able to receive $5,000 in prize money, which is quite a bit of pizza, so I think they were happy. Another project we're working on is called NASA Minds. So this is in collaboration with the biology department and architecture and planning. So CS students worked with Christina Yu students and David Hansen students to design a environment where you could grow plants, specifically chili plants, because it turns out that astronauts really miss greenery and they miss strong flavors. So green chilies are actually on or being prepared to go on to the space station. The CS students designed and built these robots that can go around and actually water plants. And the biology students designed sensors that fit onto the leaves of the plants and actually tell the robots when the plant is thirsty. The architecture students build this amazing virtual environment that could be built out of local resources. So you'd send robots to be able to sort of turn the local dust and rock into these kind of environments. And then the robots can move around and autonomously keep these plants alive, ready for people to use when they arrive. So this competition, we actually won the grand prize, the first place grand prize last year, and we're funded to continue this work. So this, again, was NASA Minds competition. You're going to hear from Carter Frost, who was involved.
Greetings, everyone. My name is Carter Frost. I'm a fresh transfer student here to UNM. At my community college, I got involved with a career robotics club and was doing the NASA Swarmathon competition that was put on by UNM. It was a great opportunity for me and my fellow students to work as a team on robots with a shared goal in mind. The high school outreach element of it pushed us to share the robots and our experience, which I then continued to do with engineering camps and scouting. I was asked to join two of UNM's NASA robot teams, one of which we qualified for the finals, and the other one we won first place. I'm currently involved with the Vulcan Dragonflies project, as well as the Swarmathon TNG team. UNM has given me a lot of opportunities to be able to grow and to share my experience with others. Greetings, everyone. My name is Carter Frost.
All right, so yes, the volcano part is coming. There's a chat question about that. All right, so what Carter was talking about there is we created 100 of these swarming robots that are out in the world, different universities, different minority serving institutions. And so that raises UNM's visibility. And we have students interested in coming here specifically because they were involved in Swarmathon. So that's been a real success. So we've been able to recruit people like Carter who have been huge assets to continuing projects. I want to talk really quickly about Raymond Davao. She is a NASA intern, or was a NASA intern, who worked on Swarmathon 3 and is currently the deputy program manager for the IRIS rover program at Carnegie Mellon. And this rover is scheduled to go on the Pegasus mission to the moon this year. It's a done deal. It's really going. And that's her on the right of my screen with a Swarmy, and there's the robot that she and, I have to admit, 200 other Carnegie Mellon graduate students worked on and built to make it moon-worthy. But we're super excited that that descendant of the Swarmies is really going to be driving around the moon, doing exactly what Swarmies were designed to do. I reached out to her yesterday, and I was a little bit worried, now that she's famous, that she would not remember her roots. But she immediately said, no, Swarmies were the inspiration for what I'm doing. This is where I started, and I'm super happy for you to give me a shout out. That mission, by the way, is going to be the first US mission to the moon, and it's also the first commercial mission in history. So NASA partnered with private companies to take that step, a really important step. All right, so having seen news reports about the Swarmathon competition and our autonomous robots, Tobias Fisher, who is now our collaborator in the Earth and Planetary Sciences Department, approached us and said, right now we're sending people to go gather gas samples from volcanoes. It's incredibly dangerous, it's slow. What can your Swarmies do? Can they do this job? Because they're designed to go into hazardous environments on the moon, Mars. We've got our own hazardous environments on Earth, they're called volcanoes. So we said, yeah, that sounds like an amazing opportunity, challenge. Maybe not ground robots, maybe flying robots would be able to deal better with volcanoes. And so that's what we've been working on. We took a preliminary mission out into Papua New Guinea a couple of years ago. This is with, I think, 10 other international teams, places like Cambridge University, universities from South America and Germany. And they all brought their own drones. These are all manually piloted. These were not autonomous drones like the Swarmies or autonomous robots. Of those teams, only one drone made it to the big volcano and survived, right? So some drones made it up there, most of them got destroyed. The main lessons we learned here was this is really hard. You're dealing with mountains, high altitudes, lava bombs, acidic gases, remote areas, and anything you could name, right? It's already a big enough challenge. So we got to work and we started designing and building the Dragonfly Robot to meet this challenge. So in my mind, and I have to say that John Erickson has done a tremendous amount of work, but from a bird's eye view, in my mind, they're flying swans. Right? I don't want to undermine him at all by saying that. That's a compliment. So Swarmies were designed to go out there in the environment and find clusters and concentrations of these target cubes and collect them. They do that with a camera, right? They see the target and they collaborate with their neighbor robots to figure out where the biggest concentrations are. We replaced that on our Dragonfly robots with a CO2 sensor that enables them to detect concentrations of CO2, talk to their brother and sister robots, and figure out, okay, where are the highest concentrations of CO2 that we'd like to sample. And the reason we wanted to get CO2 is because you can tell a lot about what's happening with a volcano, both make predictions about its future and also explain what's happening right now from the CO2 emissions. And of course, there are implications for climate change modeling. It's really important to understand how much CO2 is coming out now and how much CO2 has been out in the future. Right, but otherwise, there are a lot of parallels. They both have GPS systems, they know where they are. They both have rangefinders. The Swarmies don't run into walls and the Dragonflies don't run into the ground. And they both have high capacity batteries because these are serious long range missions where you want to have at least an hour of operation time. But most importantly, they all run the robot operating system. So everything you've seen on the robotic side has been run on the robot operating system, which provides a consistent platform and means of communication between robots for all these projects. So we can quickly take our ideas, implement them in a common system, and tackle all these different challenges. So I think that's really important. Right, so many people in New Mexico don't realize that we have an active supervolcano in northern New Mexico. We don't expect it to erupt anytime soon, but it is active, which means it's a perfect place to go and gather CO2. The CO2 is coming out of the ground there. This volcano is 30 kilometers wide or so. If it does erupt, right, we all need to care. Sometimes people ask, why do people live near volcanoes? Well, surprise, we all live very much in the blast zone of this volcano. And so understanding its future and its current activity is important. In fact, I think 40%, I read in a paper somewhere, 40% of people on the planet live within the blast zone of the volcano potentially. All right, but it's a perfect place for us to test our drones. So here they are. This is near Jemez. We've got 3 dragonflies flying in formation. They are all detecting CO2. And by taking those 3 different readings, the swarm can collectively decide what's the gradient towards the highest concentration of CO2. And you can see up there on the map in the upper left, the track of these dragonflies as they approached, indeed, the highest concentration of CO2. And these results have just been accepted. We're just looking at the final proofs for publication in Frontiers Journal. I'm going to slip, okay. But our tests are all not always successful, right? This is part of the learning curve. Every time something goes wrong with a swarmy, you can walk over and maybe kick it and it starts up again. With a dragonfly, something goes wrong, it's done, right? It's going to crash, and John needs to go back to the garage and start building more dragonflies. That's why whenever you see me showing a, oops, there we go. Whenever you see me showing a video of drones landing, we're all breathing a huge sigh of relief because we've been standing there with our hearts in our mouths, watching these autonomous robots do their thing and hoping that they come back from the mission successfully and we don't have to spend a lot of time rebuilding them. All right. We also did work in Roosevelt, so more testing in different environments. So you can see lots of gas coming out of the ground here. This is another volcanic spot. You can't see the CO2 again, that's invisible. So we need to have the robots discover that for us. And here is a dragonfly performing an exhaustive survey. And you can see all these dead trees in this desolate landscape because the sulfuric acid, sulfur gas is coming out of the ground that killed these trees. And partly I'm always stunned by the landscape here. This is in Utah. And the fact that the drone is doing exactly what it was designed to do. All right. So this is all last year. I think it was April or so that we were in Roosevelt. And Tobias came to us in September and said, hey, there's a new volcano that's erupting right now. It's extremely active in the Canary Islands on the island of La Palma. How fast can you get out there? So the previous missions we had run, maybe a maximum of 100 meters or so, a couple hundred meters that this dragonflies had flown. To do this, we would need to fly for kilometers, right? So we scrambled and we managed to get out there in about 2 weeks, 3 weeks from when we heard about this volcano. And this is what we're faced with. This is a new volcano. Again, people ask, why do people live near volcanoes? This volcano did not exist before September of last year, right? There was no mountain here. This is how the Earth forms, right? We rarely see it, but new land was forming. And it's just an inspiring, awesome spectacle that is also extremely destructive. So on the right-hand side of the screen here, we've got the volcano, and lava has flowed down to the ocean for about 4 miles through a large number of, sorry, and I click the emit button in Zoom. It throws off the presentation. Anyway, there's lots of towns here. So this volcanic eruption destroyed 3,000 buildings, caused more than $1 billion of damage, and 1 person sadly died over a period of 3 months. And this is what that looked like on the ground. You can see on the right, on the left, sorry, the mass of that volcanic lava just sweeping everything out of its path. If you've ever wondered what it looks like when lava falls into a swimming pool, now you know. All right. And this is John and my first view driving into town and seeing this volcano in the town. It's as if a volcano had popped up, it's central in Manal, right? And, people had to deal with it. So with the ash falling and the lava destroying everyone's homes, people in these towns were getting kind of fed up with this volcano. And they really wanted to know, could we tell them something about how long was it going to last, this eruption? So you can see the volcano here, lots of ash and various other gases coming out, all visible. Again, the CO2 plume we can't see. So it turns out that you can tell a lot from the CO2, as I mentioned earlier. Primarily, the CO2 isotopes that exist deep in the Earth are primordial. That means they came either from star formation or from the Big Bang itself. It's not the organic atmospheric carbon that you and I breathe out all the time. And so by looking at the ratio of the primordial carbon dioxide and the atmospheric carbon dioxide, you can estimate how deep the magma that's feeding the volcano comes from. And from that, you can make some sort of estimate about how intense is this eruption, because the deeper the magma is coming from, the more likely it's going to keep on coming. If it's a shallow magma chamber, maybe it's going to empty relatively quickly. And also you can look at the SO2, CO2 ratios and even predict eruptions. So there are papers about predicting eruptions from these ratios. So our simple task is to send a drone up into that monster volcano's plume, sample gases, return them to the geologists, and they can tell us what's going on. This is our first launch near the volcano. And as I said before, scaling up from a few hundred meters to kilometers, while the drones are flying through ash, rain, acid, who knows what else is up there, and the fact that we can't do anything about it because they're out of sight, right? Before this, we could always keep an eye on the drones. Now they have to go off, fly for half an hour or more over kilometers, and we just have to trust they do their job and come back. And so we would stand there. I don't know if I'm sure everyone was as stressed as I was, but it was definitely, again, quite stressful. But it came back. I'm going to let this video play so I can relive the moment where the drone actually came back and we hadn't wasted all the money and time going out there for the farmer and we had the results. If you look at this video, you can see ash and rain falling. That's what all that sparkling effect is. And it even found the drone, right? So this is the plot of CO2 concentrations over time. So it successfully found that CO2 plume that's visible to us. And you probably didn't catch what John was saying there, but he said, hey, I didn't have to do anything, right? The drone landed itself, did the mission. He was ready to take over in case something went wrong, and he didn't have to. So one thing to realize, and it's hard to see in these videos, of course, we had only ever flown these drones in maybe, 12, 15 mile an hour winds. And even then, we were really nervous. We're like, it's so windy, we can't do this. The winds that these drones are flying in now around the volcano are up to 40 miles an hour, right? So more than twice what we'd ever flown in before, and they handled it beautifully. And that's all down to the months of tuning that John did to make sure they could handle these really difficult conditions. We also collaborated with the team, Inat Lev from Columbia University, on measuring lava flow rates. So she develops models of lava, and to do that, she needs to know what's the viscosity of these lava flows. So I flew a drone out over the lava flows. It's really hard. That's one of the big lessons from Papua New Guinea and Canary Islands, is perspective is really impossible because we have no experience with the newly formed land that's appearing here. So I thought maybe this is 10 meters long or something when I was looking through a little viewfinder. I'm gonna back it up actually, because that in the lower left-hand corner, let's see, that's a house, right? That's a house that's been buried in lava. And so this is not 10 meters, this is hundreds of meters. And that's one of the reasons why autonomy is important. You need a robot who can go out there and do the job and respond to the environment, because human operators really have a hard time with this. All right. Another lesson we learned is that volcanoes change very fast. They really do have a personality. So this is one morning we arrived at our usual launch point to find that the volcano had opened up a new vent on the flank, and a lava lake had formed and was now overflowing. This is our previous launch site taken the day before. And this is our launch site when we came to work there in the morning. So as you might be able to see, it's entirely inundated with a new lava flow, which meant we had to launch from somewhere else and have our drones fly even further than they had before. And rely on them being able to autonomously still do the work. Oh, I see that Marlon is joining the meeting, and he was actually really instrumental in getting and overcoming one of the biggest challenges we had. One of the biggest hurdles we had was how do we get batteries for these drones to the Canary Islands? It turns out that's incredibly difficult because you can't take large batteries on airplanes, you can't ship them, you can't do anything else. So we had to design batteries that could be specially broken down to be below the hand luggage limits, and then convince security at every airport went through that, yeah, this is fine, this meets the regulations. So Marlon is the guy who broke down some of those batteries for us, and so we really owe him thanks. All right, so we changed our launch sites, and this is Scott Nowicki, a geologist who was with us, and there's John. We ran some missions that morning that identified where the plume was that morning, and now we've put some sample bags onto the Dragonfly. So it's going to fly out there, find the plume, suck up the actual volcanic gases in the plume, return them to us, we can give them to the geologists to study. And this is a one-shot, right? This is our last day of real work. If this didn't work, we get some results, but we wouldn't have the results. Every time we went into the field, we had to be accompanied by military police, military emergency responders. So, you know, these are very short windows we're allowed to work. And again, it went off with its work. Here it is landing. We don't have cameras on the drone itself. I can show you what it's doing there. So there were two bags on here, two sample bags, and one of them inflated and got the samples we needed. It turned out to be just enough for the analysis of the isotope ratios. One of the sort of experiences we had was sending these drones off to do their work. We had to kind of imagine what they were doing out there, right? Because they do have routines that tell them to return to home or how to deal with emergencies. You don't know what emergencies they're handling, and there are lots of times where a drone would return early or in a different place than we expected, and you kind of wonder what was the story behind that drone's encounter with the volcano. And so we definitely will spend a lot of time, I think, adding more logs and adding cameras so we can share the adventures of these drones in the future. All right, so what did we learn scientifically? So collaborating with the Canary Islands volcanologists. The Canary Islands are part of Spain, that's why these figures are all in Spanish. We found that the isotope ratios of CO2 corresponded with previously measured isotopes in deep sea rocks that are thought to come from 65 kilometers below the surface. So we infer that the magma coming up and producing these CO2 ratios is probably from that depth, which is really deep. And it might explain why this eruption was so violent and why it lasted so long and did so much damage. I want to share Abby Pribasova's point of view. She's a really stellar student who joined the lab as a high school student and has developed and is involved in all kinds of projects now. And we're hoping she'll stay here for graduate school. Let me let her speak.
Hello, my name is Abigail Pribasova, and I'm a junior studying computer science at UNM. Swarmathon has been a huge part of shaping my academic and career path. In the summer before my senior year of high school, I attended the School of Engineering Energy Summer Camp, where Matthew and some grad students demoed the Swarmies. Obviously, I was fascinated with the robots, and despite having virtually no programming or robotics experience, I asked and started interning at the Moses Lab. Through this, I realized how much I loved computer science and the Moses Lab, so that's largely why I decided to attend UNM and study computer science. The lab has given me the opportunity to participate in some other projects, one of which led to me being named a 2021 Goldwater Scholar. Also, through Swarmathon The Next Generation, I was able to gain some experience with machine learning. I get a year-round undergraduate internship at Sandia and applied machine intelligence the summer of my freshman year. I'm grateful to the Swarmathon, the Moses Lab, the School of Engineering, and the CS department for bringing me where I am today, and I look forward to continue working with these wonderful people.
All right. So with that, I want to acknowledge all the faculty and students who are involved in these projects. We collaborate with theoreticians, biologists, a whole host of people. And I think that's really been really valuable. And as Melanie said right at the top, that's President Stokes' vision for the university is more collaboration so that we can cross those field boundaries and accomplish more. All right, so I have to show this one last video. I did not take this video. This is from an Italian pilot who was there right at the start of the volcano. But this video is just too cool to not show. And it's short. So it might give you an idea of what the dragonflies are experiencing when you're up there out of sight dealing with the volcano. We did lose Dragonfly 3. They made an unscheduled landing right about here, and we decided maybe we shouldn't take out a lot of. That's the point of the dragonflies, is they're expecting to fly. All right, so that is a really exciting video. I am ready for questions, but while you all are asking questions, I want to show you another side of the volcano, which is really relaxing. So after a hard day's work with the drones, we go and sit by the lava river, and relax, because it's, it sounds like a fire. It was freezing rain at the time, so it's nice and warm, and it's, just watch it slowly drift by. All right, questions?
Great. Well, thank you both for sharing your incredible work with us. As Dr. Frick mentioned, we'll start the question and answer portion. So again, you can use the chat function that's at the bottom of your Zoom window. But we do have a few questions just to kick it off. So what was the biggest challenge traveling to a volcano?
John, do you want to handle that one?
Sure. Excellent presentation, guys. First of all, really encapsulated our efforts out there. And yeah, biggest challenge, I'd say, traveling out there. I think Matthew talked about it. This was, I guess, the logistics, mainly around handling batteries and preparing for that. I wanted to actually just ship them out and get someone that would receive them on the other end. But it turns out that shipping lithium-ion batteries, especially big ones, there's a lot of regulations around this. There's a lot of costs around actually getting it through different airports, and internationally, it's almost a non-starter. You almost can't even do it without a lot of preparation and contracts in place. So with the short lead time we had, we just decided in the end we were going to hand carry them over, and honestly, TSA and everyone else didn't even bat an eye for the most part. And it was, it's almost expected that we carry them. In fact, I got stopped by TSA, I think in Germany on the way back. And I was like, oh, finally, they're going to check out the batteries. And no, they pulled a tube of toothpaste out of my backpack and said, you can't have this, and stuck it in the garbage can. I'm like, guess that's my dental hygiene for. So yeah, I'd say that was the biggest challenge, other than, I guess, yeah, just the long-term travel going out there.
Just to add, so go ahead.
Oh yeah, I'll just chime in to say, Matthew mentioned that Marlon helped with decomposing these batteries into small packets. Raphael gave us advice. Raphael Fierro, who is an integral part of the Vulcan team, who's on the call, faculty in the School of Engineering. Tammy Arkey is on the call. She was the person who negotiated all of these purchases and, you know, extra airline things. So I just want to highlight that the logistics were really tough, and it was just fabulous to have a UNM team behind us, without which I think the team never would have made it to the Canary Islands.
That's absolutely true. That's absolutely true. I was just going to quickly add that once we got there, right, this is a volcano. And so people aren't supposed to be going up to volcanoes. And so we spent a lot of time and worked very closely with Volcan, which is the Vulcan monitoring site on the Canary Islands. And they were able to negotiate with emergency response teams to let us accompany the military emergency response groups that went out there. I think by the third or fourth day, they trusted us and they left us alone. But it definitely, every day we're worried, not only are the drones going to work, is the volcano going to kill us all? You know, is this all going to work? But can we even get there for all that to happen because of the roadblocks, et cetera?
Wow, I'm glad everything worked out. Looks like we have another question from Robert. He asks, does the wind from the propellers affect the CO2 concentration?
Great question. We did some experiments to investigate that. Yes, the answer is yes, but on such a small scale compared to a volcano that it doesn't really matter too much. That's the short answer.
All right, let's see, one from Kim. This looks like an intense and dangerous project. What was the scariest part of the mission?
Scariest part of the mission, that's a good question. Missing our flights. Right, I mean, or being stopped without, you know, the scariest part for me was we were going to get out there, but our batteries were going to be confiscated. And so we're just going to have to sit on the beach, you know, spending UNM's money. So I was really excited when it was over that it went as well as it did, because 1,000,001 things could have gone wrong that would have prevented this from working. And it's just, as Melanie said, a testament to all the hard work from the administration at UNM, getting it to go, and John's hard work that it all came off so well.
I'll chime in on this one too. And yeah, I agree with Matthew 100%. Like, so many people were involved, and for all the dominoes to fall here, that it's really a wonder that everything went as smoothly as it did. I'll tell you, we had special access to the volcano, to a position near the volcano that Volcano had, and they wanted to show us like what the volcano was actually doing. And I'll tell you, this thing was impressive, to say the least. First of all, the landscape is nightmare inducing. You've never been on a landscape like this before that's just suffocated by ash, but also this active, like, large source of energy nearby that's loud and is doing something that is very dangerous. Because that was the most dangerous part of the mission, the scariest part of the mission, I'd say, for me at least.
So John, you reminded me of something, which is I was the only person insured to drive the Jeep, right? So we got this great Jeep, it was really wonderful, but they had me drive up to near the volcano, and volcanologists always park with the nose of their vehicles away from the volcano. So they can quickly get in and drive away. So I'm driving over what used to be a road, but is now sort of like snow drifts of ash. So I'm sliding all over the place. And one of the Volcan people says, "Oh, it looks like the poisonous gas level is increasing. Could you drive a lot faster?" And so I'm like, you know, looking at a precipice on one side, on this snowdrift in a Jeep, just trying to keep it together. But we're here to tell the story, I guess.
Great. So we have one from Ranjit. He says, hello, or hi, I have an idea for extending range of your batteries. What is the current status? How many minutes of flying time available?
It's about an hour, but it depends a lot on altitude and other factors. And we're doing some theoretical work to try and extend that time by reducing turning. But again, John can speak in more detail about that.
Yeah, that's accurate. I think they're in La Palma. It was about something like 40 minutes. Just depends on conditions. I think wind was really a factor in our battery life out there. But yeah, I think in general we're always interested in new ideas. So If you want to contact, I guess, Matthew or myself or anyone on the project, we'd love to hear your ideas. So.
Cool, thank you. Let's see, we have one from Doug. Next time, maybe ask Noah for travel support.
Oh, interesting. Yeah, that's a great idea.
Yeah, all right. I actually have a question for Dr. Moses. I know I guess the robots were mimicking ants. So I was curious, were there any other animals or insects that were kind of prospects as well?
Yeah, great question. In fact, the other organism that we took some inspiration from was actually plants. So one of the algorithms that John has actually been developing started as, we were looking for an efficient way to fill space, right? To start in one spot and to go out and come back and go out and come back. And really sample a large area efficiently because we're always limited, as Rajit's question implied, we're always limited by the flight time. So how could we do that in the most efficient way possible? It turns out sunflowers do this. So if you look at the pattern in a sunflower or the pattern in a pine cone, in early CS classes, we often learn about the Fibonacci sequence, right? A sequence of numbers, right? Where you create the next number by adding the previous two numbers. That sequence is used by plants, a variety of plants, to fill space efficiently. And we actually used that same mathematical formulation to develop an algorithm to cover space. And that was part of the impetus of one of John's algorithms that we didn't manage to get that going yet in the Canary Islands, but when we have multiple drones trying to survey an area, that's something we hope we'll be able to go back to. So nature's surprising in a lot of different ways. I would not have, at the outset, I wouldn't have thought we would have found efficient algorithms by looking at, growing sunflowers.
Yeah, that's really interesting. Great. Well, I think that concludes today if there are no further questions, but thank you again, all of you, for joining us. And thank you to the audience for listening and enjoying this. So yeah, go Lobos.